Hello. I hope that your day has been going well. I hope that you have taken some time to enjoy this beautiful spring day. I hope that you also have had time to just breathe and enjoy this time and just take time to take care of yourself. Now, as we move into the next chapter in your social work skills book, chapter 7, preparing. And as we go into this discussion and talk about preparing, I want you to think about, what the work has to be done before you get to your client, before you make your initial contact, and how important it is that you have, taken time to relax, that you are centered, that you recognize the importance of self care, and a lot of that has to do with how well you're going to interact with your client. So in your handbook on chapter 7, if you would turn with me or reference in your book on page 249, there are some exercises that we're going to do together. There are some things that we're going to talk about and that you're going to do on Blackboard, and then we're going to have some discussion board. I am going to start with preparing. You know exactly what it is and what it says. One of the things I want to point out about this, if you are not prepared before your initial visit with your client, then if you don't prepare, if you don't plan to prepare, then you're gonna plan to fail. It's something like that how they go. But I want you to know, if you do not make the necessary steps in the beginning, before you see your client, then there may be some actions that will take place that you may not be as successful as you want to. My goal is to help you to become the best social worker that I know that you have the potential to be in. So now, let's say if you plan, if you fail to plan, that's what I was trying to say, then you plan to fail. And I don't want that happening to any of you. Now, on your PowerPoints, if you'll pull that up, and along with your social work skill book, we'll be able to go right through this chapter and move into the next and get into our exercise. Now, there are some factors that, if you don't plan, then your client may drop out. If you looking on your PowerPoint, if social workers lack the ability to plan and make those necessary preparation before they actually see their client, then there's a possibility that there may be some ethical decisions, there may be some cultural decisions, there may be some things that may take place that you may be unaware of that can impact that therapeutic or that helping professional relationship. Now, some factors that influence dropout rates are the difference between the personal and cultural expectations of the client. When a client comes to you, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, there is a certain expectation that they have of you. That expectation may be how you're going to look, how you're going to communicate with them. But if you have not done your research on them or done any type of preparation before they get there, guess what? You may offend your client. You may not be able to communicate with them if you don't know that on the beginning. So failure of social workers to express understanding of the client's view of the problem, be sufficient and effective prepared for the first meeting. If you don't do that, I promise you, you will find yourself in some hot waters. And how do you prepare? And we're going to get into that. You prepare by making sure that you access all the available resources that you have to get to know that client a little bit better. You make sure that you have done some research on the culture, at least have some understanding of that family that you're going to meet, okay, in the situation. So we're talking about preparatory interview. As we study this, we're going to discuss the purpose and the functions of preparing. We also going to engage in preparatory reviewing. Now, it's going to be kind of hard for us to do it because we're not face to face, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that when you're doing your videos and also some of the exercises in the back of your book. So what does preparatory reviewing looks like? If you would turn with me In your book on page 251, you will see in bold what preparatory reviewing. It involves in examining and considering information available to that person via the agency or the before you see that client, and that's what I kind of was going over it initially. Looking at if you're working with the agency, has that person been to the agency before? Do you know, what's the history of this family? You want to gather that information before you make your initial contact, because if you don't, then you may be missing some information that will help them to become access a place of peace. It also helps the social worker grasp significant facts and circumstances before. I keep saying before the meeting. You can't do that. Can't procrastinate. You can't wait till the last minute. You have to get in there and look at old records. See, have that family been to the agency before? See, is there some information that you need that may be beneficial to you to help that client? And then one of the things, if you do your research in advance, it helps that client not to have to be able to have to repeat the same information over and over again. You may have to, you might have to verify, validate it, whether or not their address is correct, or this how they spell their name, or this how that. But if you do that, it'll ensure that meeting goes just as you plan. Now remember, it's not rehearsed. It's gathering information that you're gonna need that will help you better serve that client. Big difference, okay? Let's move on. I was about to say any questions on that, but if you do, you can email me, and then we can discuss that and talk about it, okay? But I think as you go through this social work skill book and you really do the exercises and at the back of the book, I think that it'll help you in your understanding of this. And then when we get together on our Zoom calls, and that would also be beneficial to you, okay? Now, look at preparatory reviewing. What happens? I kind of hit on that before. It allows efficient use of your time. That means if you prepare beforehand, you're not having to worry about their address, what's going on. You kind of got some information, so you can go in and from the beginning just to start to talk about what it is that you need. And then, you know what? There's nothing more important than a person knowing that, Miss Bell or Mr. Russell, they took the time to go back and reflect on my old address. They learned a little bit about me. For example, you may think that person can play ball or enjoy sports or enjoy something. Maybe you can start the conversation with that. But it makes that client feel like you cared enough about them that you took time to research the information. That's important, because you know what? There's an old saying: you only get one chance to make a first impression. If you don't prepare, then you could cause some issues with you and your client working relationship. One of the things I want to tell you, your next bullet on it says requires a thorough study of available material. I cannot say this enough to you, okay? Failure to do so may even constitute professional negligence and malpractice. Listen, it depends on which setting that you're working in. If you're working in an agency where clients may have a history with the agency, or you're working in, use that information to help you to get to understand and know that client a little bit better. Because, for example, you may be working with a client who may have been in a military base. And let's say if they are exposed to the color orange or red, or it's something, there's a trigger that may trigger something. And if you have not read that word and you go in there and you use that same language, something that was traumatic to that client, then guess what? You've already created a poor social worker client relationship because you didn't do your work. Okay. Now there may be times that you don't have access to resources, and then in that time you would make your time available by doing the research on why are they referred here. What are the likelihood. If you have no information about why this person is here, they never been to your agency, then look at what's the problem. then start thinking about, wonder how or he or she got there. What can I do to help them get to a place of peace? What are the circumstances? What are some possible circumstances that led to them seeking help from our agency? What are the available resources? Do your work that way. Because I noticed that and some of you, when we're doing our videos, and some of the feedback that you were giving me when I had you to do one of the exercise, you were like, I don't know how I would feel about this, and I don't know what resources. That's why, depending on what agency you work for, that you are willing to do the resources. Know if a client is coming to you for domestic violence, know all the available resources for families who are dealing with a domestic violence. If you got someone that you're working with who has a drug addiction, know all your available resources. Know, just, you have to be a walking book of resources. And you, not necessarily that you got them stored in your head, but you know how, what are some possible services that I can provide. Move back. What are some possible services that I can provide for my client that will help us have make our time more valuable? You don't want to, well, I'm not sure. You want to have some things in place. And the only way you're going to know that is the intake form. What led them to your organization? Okay? Preparation, reviewing. That means you got to do some research. You got to, before you get to your client, okay? If you don't do that, then there's some potential risk. Documents containing outdated information. If you can cause a major problem when you're working with your clients if you don't do that. So look on page 251. I would read that and be familiar. Basically, preparatory reviewing is making sure that you utilize all your available resources so that you can better serve that client. Now, if they've never been to your agency, why are they there? And then what available resources are there that will help that person get to a point where they need to. Turn to your books now on page 253. And then what are some of those preparatory exploring? What type of questions, what type of things can you do to get information to be able to help that, before that meeting? Ask questions, seek information prior to the meeting. Is there, again, has this person been to the agency? What services are available for that? Maybe even contacting some other agencies like, hey, I got this client who was referred to us from Salvation Army. Well, we don't have these services here. Are you aware of any other services in the community that provide these services? Don't have a client seeking help and coming to you and you have no resources, or you haven't done your preparatory work in order for them to get to a better place. If you do your preparatory reviewing, knowing what the information about the client, then you're exploring what resources are over there, I guarantee you that is going to help build a positive and a productive first meeting with your client, okay? Look at some of your sources on your PowerPoint. Let's look at your PowerPoint. Sources, intake workers from the agency. There may be some, intake worker there at the agency who can give you some information about that client. You can even contact whoever made that referral to your agency. There's nothing wrong with contacting them and say, hey, Takia referred Shelby to this agency, but I don't really know anything. What's wrong with reaching out to Takia and saying, hey, this is something that I didn't include in the referral, but you may want to know this about this client. Because we all are human, we will make mistakes, but you want to make sure social workers at the agency who previously served the client. Listen, I see this a lot with social workers in agencies. They may not been able to develop a good rapport with that client simply because they lack preparation, they lack exploring. But if you go in there and you explore all, who was the other social worker? What worked well? What didn't work well? How did you engage that client? What was this client? What are the strengths? What are the things that didn't work? if you do all that work beforehand, then by the time that you get to that client and they're working with you, then that relationship may be in a better place. Okay, so I hope that making sense to you. That's also, so you have different. We got preparatory reviewing, we got preparatory exploring, and now preparatory consult. Now all of it sound the same, but they're different. They're very different. All of them involve you doing things before you actually come in contact with that client. Now turn to with me to page 255 in your book. Okay, you want to read that. What is preparatory consultation? Seeking advice from a social work supervisor or a colleague concerning upcoming visit with a prospective client. Now, let me say this. We talk about, it's good to get information from people, but you also have to be able to distinguish, is this subjective information or is this objective information? Because we know that sometimes people just don't click, they don't get along. So you want to make sure when you're talking to the supervisor, when you're talking to the other social workers, that they're not coming from a place of being subjective, that they're really being objective. This is not that I just don't like that client, or they this or this. And you'll probably hear that, and some of you probably heard that when you're doing your volunteer work. But remember, when you're in a professional setting, you want to make sure that the information that you're getting is very objective. Now, will you hear some subjective opinion? And some of it is going to be subjective, but it's going to be up to you as a social worker to be able to decipher, what you need to hold on to, or even just holding on to it and just having that, but not judging that client based on what someone else said. Okay, we are in a non-judgmental profession, but and you don't want to judge them based on what someone else said. Consulting with experts on a topic that appears relevant to forthcoming meeting. Now, depending on if you're working with aging, you would assume that you're pretty up on the information that's related to aging and gerontology, the study of Alzheimer's, medication abuse, vulnerable. You assume you would know all that. However, but if you're coming from an agency where your primary focus has been on children or people who are struggling with substance abuse, and now you got a client who is elderly, or you have a client who is an adolescent, and you have no idea, but your agency provides services to them, what do you have to do? You're like, I haven't worked with someone in this stage of development in a long time. Do your research, lifelong learning. Also, you can take this opportunity to even contact another agency and build your network. Contact, hey, I haven't done a lot of work on domestic violence, but I have someone here that I'm working with. Can I pick your brain? Can we share some information? There is nothing wrong with consulting with somebody who is practicing that in the field. You have to make sure you do that. A lot of social work, a lot of times social work, people think we know a lot about a lot of stuff. We can be a jack of a lot of trades. We have a lot of trades that we can do, and it's not because we know it, but because we know how to access resources that are available to social workers. And now I'm encouraging you, don't ever try to go it alone. If you're working with in a mental health setting, and that's been your background all this time, and now you're going to work into another setting, and you can take those experiences and tools that you've gotten from that, but it's a different setting. So you have to learn and be trained, okay? One of the other things, reason to identify tentative, objective, or discuss service-related issue. That's what I kind of talked about a while ago. When you meet with that other person at the agency, your supervisor or your colleague, it's to discuss some potential problems that may arise. Again, you have to use your social work assessment skills to make sure that you're not non-judgmental, but also that you're going to take that information that you're getting from that colleague and storing it as something, as a resource or tool that you can use, but try not to judge them. One of the biggest mistakes that I've seen in over my 30 years is that, let's say social worker A and social worker B had the same client, And when B talked to A, it was horrible, all this. But then when A came in there and tried to work with that client, they had a good relationship. People sometimes personality just don't click, okay? And people they develop a different type of working relationship. So you have to be mindful that that too can happen, and even in a social work professional setting. So don't judge somebody else's story. Don't judge somebody else's story or somebody else in the way that you're going to treat them. Okay, don't do that. You can't judge somebody else based on their narrative of that person. Okay, it's you know, you can hold that information and have it, but don't let that be the guiding force of how you treat them. Okay, that can lead you to lawsuits, professional negligence, and malpractice. So don't do that. Okay, now we're gonna move on. One of the things when you're doing preparatory work, I've said something about this. You're getting information on that person's culture, their religion, their ethnic group. You're doing all that you can. I remember one day I was at a place at an agency somewhere, and the worker had gotten a phone call, and and she was going to see somebody, and and they were from a different ethnic group, okay, and she was like, "Oh, Miss Sheila, I don't want to go out there. I don't even speak their language." Blah blah. You know, she was so upset that she was getting this referral and having to see this family who she made an assumption that didn't speak English. She just didn't want to do them. She said, "I don't know how. I don't know how to communicate with them." And I said, "Well, I said, have you called them and to see, you know, do they speak English? And if you're gonna need an interpreter?" She said, "No, ma'am, but I just know." She got herself all worked up. And I said, "Won't you call them to see, is there a need for an interpreter?" And when she called them, they were able to speak her language. And she said, "I just can't believe I did that. I got myself all worked up." If you make an assumption about a person based on what your thoughts and your belief, it may not be true. Just do your research. Do that. Social workers should be aware of clients' right to privacy. Now, let me go back first, okay? To inquire about agency and policy or legal obligations, before you go out, you need to make sure what is the agency policy, what is the legal responsibility. Like, for example, this young lady, she said, "I'm not gonna go out there and I'm not gonna talk because I know they don't speak English, based on their name." And I said, "But I told her, I said, well, that's not your place." I said, "Our agency has been deemed the one who's supposed to take care of this matter. So you're gonna have to, not go on this now." She said, "But Miss Yu, they don't speak English." I said, "How do you know that? You haven't made a contact with them." And so sometimes you have to make sure that legal and the agency policy and obligations to the public, you still have a obligation to do things, but also you have to do your work beforehand. I hope this is making sense to you. Now, social workers should be aware of clients' rights to privacy. This is a real big one in the age of technology, okay? Let's listen. Yes, you're going to do your work on your clients, and yes, you're going to do some research, and I guarantee you that some of us, sometimes people use social media, outlets to see, can you find the clients, or just do that. That's okay, but you got to remember, clients have a right to privacy. You shouldn't be going into accessing information only to achieve the provision for service. For example, you may not can get in touch with that person, their address, their phone number, but you've discovered that person has a social media account. You may can use that because you're trying to enhance so that you can get this person to a place of peace, or so that you can make provision for the service to the client. But you shouldn't just be on there so you can say, "Oh, look what they're doing. I can't believe they did this. They did." No, ma'am. No, sir. That is not why you do that. If you're accessing information, remember, even when you're doing your assessment, clients have a right to privacy. You are only supposed to access information that is going to either help you in your decision making or is is relevant to why you're involved with that family. If you're seeking a family for domestic violence or child sexual abuse, you have no business in that financial. How much you did this. Some things is just not your business. Okay, make sure that you're aware that that's something that is covered all through our ethics. Clients have a right to privacy. Okay. Now let's go to preparatory arranging. So consult is making sure that you are using all your resources, talking to your supervisors and all that, or even gathering information. So we have preparatory reviewing, preparatory exploring, preparatory consult, and now we have preparatory arrangement, which is found on page 258 in your book. If you'll turn with me to that. So what is preparatory arrangement? Look on your PowerPoint. It should be there. I want you to, look at that. And these are some things that you're doing before the client gets there. So to make that visit go well, so that you can use that time with your client to better ensure that everything goes well, smooth, and you can just have a smooth transition. And so that you won't have to be doing this at the beginning. So what do you schedule an appointment with the client? Make sure it's convenient to them, because guess what? If you schedule an appointment with a client or a person and they're not okay with their schedule, the likelihood of them going to show up is slim. They will not show up, or they may not stick to the appointment. Ensures adequate time and privacy. How long you need to spend with that client, how much time it's going to take. If you don't do that arranging and preparing before that, guess what's going to happen? They may have a doctor's appointment. They may have work. They may have something they have to do, and you may not be on their schedule. And again, that doesn't have anything to do with their client. That has to do with you, because you failed to plan and you failed to do the work that you need to do. How much time is going to take? Then going back to here on one, locating an interpreter in that event that you need one. Because guess what? Clients have to have informed consent, and if they're not able to understand and communicate with you, how are they going to be able to consent to treatment? You're, as a social worker, going to have to do that in advance. Now, this one on here, and I'm laughing, ensuring personal hygiene. You like, Miss Neighbors, why are we talking about this? You have to make sure that you're in check. We talked about this in class. Make sure that your body is ready. That the clients don't smell you. They don't that you're clean. That your hygiene's that you're dressed appropriate. That they can trust you. People will judge you by that. Now, I'm gonna say this to my smokers. That's your business if you smoke. But you got to remember, you're working with clients and families that may have allergies to that. So if you smoke, you got to prepare for it. Make sure you're clean. Make sure, that's not offensive to someone else. Okay. I know some of, personally, that's your choice. But when you're working with families and clients and organizations, a lot of times smokers are not aware that scent is a little stronger than it needs to be. So you don't want your comfort thing to be why your client don't want to come back. Okay, so make sure that, and then you have to see. We live in an area, and some of you may live in an area where they don't have public transportation. You live in a rural area, so they may not have transportation. So you might have to find out, how can we assess, how can we meet the needs of this client when they don't even have adequate transportation? So you're going to you do all that in advance. And why are you doing all this in advance? So that you can make that visit a good visit with your client, so that you can ensure that client will not drop out because your lack of preparation. Okay. And then securing child care, because if you're going to be talking to the mom and dad or the caregivers about some things that are very not age appropriate for children, then you have to make sure that they have someone to watch over their kids, or even your initial visit, Miss Neighbors, or Miss Hensley, or Miss Martin, or Miss Matthews. I understand that you have children. Well, that the meeting that we're going to talk about may involve some information that may not need to be discussed in front of children. Do you have child care? All of that, because parents are going to be concerned about their kids. Okay, so make sure you've done that. Look on and then another thing should facilitate communication and diminish interference and distraction. You got to make sure that you're making sure when you're doing your initial assessment and talking with those families, there is not going to be anything to distract you, from that. For example, if you're going to, like for me, I got this issues with cats. Okay, I'm not particular. I'm kind of a little afraid of them a little bit, but some people like cats. So when I was on the front line, I used to ask, do you have any animals, or if they would say yes, I said, well, do you have any cats or dogs, and then they would say yes, and I said, do you mind putting them away so that our meeting can be more meaningful, so that I can be able to address that with you, and they may say yes, or if they say no, you can bring them to your office, but just have that conversation, because if you go there and they got cats jumping all behind your back, and dogs growling at you, then that's and you're jumping, and you're not fully present because of your own issues. So you want to make sure that you address those things, or you can ask, will there be any distractions when we meet? Well, what kind of distractions? Do you have any animals? Do you have a cell phone? I would like you to, not to have your cell phone, or be on your video game, or having other guests there at the house, because we have a very important matter to talk about. And you want to make sure that it needs to benefit the client. Now, I don't like dogs, or I don't get, no, my meeting with you has to be purposeful. I wanted to make sure that I can address you, and I don't, us without any distraction. And I don't want your pets or anything, or anything that would cause us not to be able to make the best use of our time. I hope that's making sense to you. And then also, if you do that, it improves the efficiency, it increases the probability that your client is going to be successful, and that engagement with you is going to be successful, because you've done all that work ahead of time. Now, the reality of it is we do live in a fast-paced world, and a lot of times when you get out in the field, social workers will be like, I don't have time to do all of that. But if you don't, you'll do it on the back end. Okay? So make that time. Make that time to do that. Now, this is where I really want to, if you'll turn with me to page 259. This is so important. Preparatory empathy. I noticed that on your exercise that we done earlier, and a lot of you discussed some concerns about being able to access peace, being able to with the circumstances, and this is where we begin to do that work. Because if you do all this preparation work beforehand, you will know if there's some potential issues or biases or things that may come up with you. And preparatory empathy, envisioning the world. Listen, this is some good stuff. It doesn't matter how bad that situation is, and that report or that concern, but I want you to envision the world or that current circumstances from their point of view, or from that group's point of view, or from their experience. How can you imagine how that victim feels? What was going on through that perpetrator's mind? Now, some of it you probably like, I don't want to think about that. But being aware of those feelings and those things that you have about a certain situation will help you to develop empathy, and it also will help you lead to centering, anticipating others' subjective experience related to a seeking. So, how do they feel about having? I want you to think right now for a moment. Think about one of the most painful experience that you have ever experienced in your life. Think about that. Now I want you to, okay, lock the door. Um, then I'm sorry, y'all. That was my family. Mama out here in the back enjoying this time. I want you to think about one of your most painful experience, very painful. Then I want you to think about one of your most shameful experiences in your life. Now I want you to think about sharing and telling a stranger, because that's what you will be to them, about that experience, how it felt, how it smelled, how, all those emotions. Now, that's how you begin to prepare. You know, I was so proud, and I gave you some feedback on that. Some of you put, after we were able to get past, the perpetrator and all what they did, I wonder what happened to him or her that made them do what they did. Not that you're agreeing with them, but if you begin to be able to see it from all aspects, that kind of helps you to be prepared for this meeting with this family, because you've explored that. Because if you don't, you're gonna go out there and it's all gonna hit you at one time, and you don't want to do that. So anticipating, what were they experiencing? I mean, well, why did they do that? I wonder why. What happened in their life journey? What happened? What trajectories? What was it that led to them feeling like they had to do this? That's the beginning preparatory empathy. What happened? What made them do that? What happened? How did she feel? How did he feel? Were they embarrassed? Were they ashamed? Were they hurt? When you're able to look at that from that angle, then you're beginning to learn what preparatory empathy is. Not that you agree with them in that, but you're like, what is it? Not that and sometimes these same experiences you'll be sympathizing, because some of you may have experienced that. So that's why we're going to get to the next thing, talking about centering. But preparatory empathy, how deep the feeling. So again, ask yourself, how would I feel telling someone about the thing that hurt me the most, or the thing that caused me the most shame? And then that begin to help you with that. I hope this is some good stuff. It's powerful. Now, one of the things it does, and I kind of hit on it, it helps gain an increased appreciation for the client's motivation to contact you. It helps you say, I understand now why she wanted to get out, why she wanted help, why she finally told, why he finally wants to get sober, why, whatever. It also helps your thoughts and feelings about engaging in an authority figure. You will be seen as a authority figure in this person's life, and then you're going to be engaged with authority figures. And then guess what? It may be sometimes people in authority who has caused this pain, or shame or hurt. So this is going to help you with your feelings about this whole thing. Preparatory empathy. Now, there are some issues related to this, okay? There may be gender issues that may prevent you from being able to empathize. It may be sexual orientation, maybe the stage of life they're going through. It could be ethnic background. It could be a socioeconomic status. It could be a lot of things that will prevent you from being able to empathize, or them to be able, there's a lot of factors. That's why throughout your journey here at the university, we always asking you to do your work. Do your work, because you will use yourself as a tool. Your own experience, even those experiences that has caused you the greatest pain and hurt, are the same things that are going to use to help motivate and help someone else. But you have to know how to use them. Okay. Turn to now. Let's Preparatory empathy is take place before the worker meets the client. That that's not, you're not gonna meet them and all of a sudden, oh, you empathize with them. No, you got to do that work beforehand, because as you're doing that work, there may be something that comes up in you from your own experiences that may not allow you to empathize with them. Okay. I remember one time, it's been years and years ago, and I have never forgotten this visual. It was when I was working frontline, which was over 30 some years ago. Okay. But we had gotten a report from the school, and when I worked in another area, and the report was a little boy couldn't sit down. He had so many marks and bruises on him. He said that he had gotten a beating from the night before, and so when we go up there to the school to assess the situation, the social worker and we took someone else with us, someone else to be there with us. And I'm gonna tell you the most disturbing thing that happened, and it broke my heart, and it stuck with me to this day. This child was covered, his backside was covered. He was black and blue and bruised. He had open wounds. It was pretty bad. And of course, there were some people who were able to empathize. And then there was this one person who was there who worked for the school. And she said, that's the problem right now. She said, I was all right. I made it through it. It didn't stop me. She could not even, it didn't stop me. Sometimes kids need this. I got whoopings when I was little. All this kind of stuff. At that point, she lost her ability to empathize with that child because she still had her own brokenness and hurt. Now, I say this to you because we may all of us have experienced some type of brokenness and hurt in our lifetime. I don't know, it could be intentional or non-intentional. It happens. But you have to do your work before time to make sure that you don't lack empathy because of your own experience. Okay? Everybody survives different. Okay? One of the things that will hinder our ability based on incomplete information, impressions are tentative, preliminary, and subject to change based on client's actual communication. So know that. But I want you to turn to, hold on. We have exercise, and this will be something you would do on your homework on page 260, exercise 7.5, preparatory empathy. I want you to do that question, and I will upload that on Blackboard, so that you'll know that you'll have to do that. That's an assignment that will be due. It'll be due by Saturday of this week, at 11:59. Okay, but you will do that on page 260, exercise 7.5, preparatory empathy. Do that exercise. Okay, you'll have to do that. Now, it's important to do that because I'm gonna tell you something. When you get out, in the field, there's some stuff that's gonna come up. So the work that you do beforehand will help you to make sure that yourself, don't get your bruised or your injured self don't show up. Okay, and if that shows up, sometimes people lack empathy. Okay, I keep saying that. Now let's look on page. Now remember, homework on Blackboard, I'm going to put that on there. Page 260, exercise 7.5, preparatory empathy. Okay? Now let's look on page 261, preparatory self-exploration. Okay? I kind of got to that a little bit. There are different forms of, this is a way that you self-analysis, self-reflection, your introspection on how you look. This helps social workers to identify with how he or she is affected by the client's interactions. And this is where our own baggage and stuff come up. This is where our stuff comes up. So you have to make sure that you've done your work. Now, On here it says involves identifying factors that may affect the readiness to provide services. Now, I'm going to say that again. It's on your PowerPoint. Preparatory self-exploration identifies factors that may affect the readiness to provide service. That means, and that's there may be some stuff on your life journey that says you're not ready for this particular client. Okay, especially if you have not done the work. Okay, and because yourself will show up, do your work, and not just say, "Well, I've done some of my work," but make sure that you have application of that work that you're doing. Because if you don't, you may project onto the client, and you may not be able to help them the best way that you can, and actually you may be causing more pain than you realize. So let's make that promise that we won't do that. When you do that self exploration beforehand, it leads to high professional services to the client. Because that way you've done your work, you put Sheila in check, you put Mr. Ties in check, you got Miss Hook in check, you got all your stuff, Miss Sarah, you got all your stuff in check. Okay, so now you know that you can create a non-violent now you can do the work for your client. Because on here when it's got non-violent, because sometimes when we show up and our stuff show up, we come across as not being able to provide a place of peace for our clients, but a place of unrest. Then you start using language of the head instead of the language of the heart, and then you find yourself in a very, very bad place. Now, let me say something to you. Don't beat yourself up in the event that you've been there, done that. We all have made some errors in judgment and without doing our work, but I'm asking you as upcoming professionals, do your work beforehand, because if you do that, then do your own personal work, and then do your preparatory work before you see your clients. Okay, that's important. Now, I had look on page 261. There's some more homework, and yes, you will have to do that. Okay, on page 261, exercise 7.6, preparatory self-exploration. Answer number 1. Do that. That's your assignment. You'll need to do that. I'm going to upload that and have a place for you to submit that on Blackboard for chapter 7. Now, I have been waiting to get to this. I did a lot of feedback to you. Centering is so important. It is one of the most important things that you are going to do. All of it's important. All of it's good stuff, y'all. But I just think centering and being able to look at all the circumstances, looking at who you are, organizing your thoughts, your feelings about the situation, it's important, because that's what you're going to do right before you meet your client. You can find that on page 262, and then looking at your PowerPoint. Centering is the ability to organize your personal thoughts, your feelings, and listen to this, your thoughts, your feelings, and your physical sensations. You remember when we did that first exercise, Access a Place of Peace, and I was asking you to, the book was asking, and I was reading, that's what I was looking for, you to get in touch with. Did that make you angry? Did it make you sad? Did it make you mad? And I got so tickled. Some of you said you wanted to knock somebody out and you wanted to hurt somebody. I get that. And that's being able to be real, authentic, true to yourself and how you're feeling. But if you don't do that, then you'll find yourself acting some of that out in when you working with your client. So centering means so that all of that you're doing, so it won't interfere with your professional or the delivery, how you're going to do your job. Okay, because let's say if you have this feeling about a population or about people in a certain situation, and then you get in contact with them and you're there, and you just flooded with emotions, and you find yourself as someone said on your work, Miss Neighbors, I had some language that's come up, y'all. I'm telling you, it'll happen. It has happened to me, And I'm sure it's happened to other professionals. And so, but if you don't prepare and do your work beforehand, you increase the likelihood of you allowing your physical sensation, your own thoughts and feelings about someone to interfere with your professional set. That is not good. Okay. So what is centering? Oh, this is some good stuff. Listen here. Number one is accessing a place of peace where one is free from evaluative judgment and non-defensive. You're not defensive, okay? You are in a place of peace. You read that case, or you look at that intake and you look at it and you read it, you process it with somebody, and then you go from there. I had a client one time when I worked for the resource center, and one of the social workers came to me and she said, Miss Sheila, she said, I want to go over this with you before I see this person. And we talked about it, and then I was like, man, what are you gonna do about that? And we talked about it, but guess what she did? When she went and saw that client, she had gotten it out. She was able to not be defensive or her having her own personal beliefs about that thing, or she was just able to do the work in a professional setting. There's nothing wrong with being able to center and process that. And it's being able to mobilize and the courage to participate in public demonstration. Being able to be, because a lot of the work, now remember, some work we do is going to be micro, some going to be macro, and some of it's going to be meso. So, but if you're going out there to do a lot of, especially when you're doing a lot of social justice work, you don't want your client or the group or whoever you're working with to see your anger and your frustration when you're trying to be an advocate. You need for them to see what is it that you're advocating for. What are those places of strength and not your own issues. Now we all can get there, okay? Centering aids in engagement of brief stress management exercise. It'll help you reduce your emotional reactivity. And it'll promote self-control. Some of you say, oh, I wanted to hit, or I wanted to ball my fist, I wanted to do that. If you center before that, it helps you to release some of those anxiety or make you think about all the feelings that you have, and you can process that with someone else so that you won't get out there and make it worse for yourself and that client, okay? Now, you're probably thinking, Miss Neighbors, this is never going to, I'm telling you, keep on living. Keep on practicing. There will be circumstances and situations that come up that will have you you want to pull your hair out, or you want to pull their hair out. You don't want, but that is not what we need to do. But if you don't center, if you don't do your preparation work beforehand, and that's even meaning if you get a referral on somebody and it's okay to consult with your supervisor and say, you know what, I have some personal issues that I experienced down in my life that I haven't not fully healed from. Is it okay that you give this to another social worker? That's okay. That's professionalism, and that's doing the least harm. Because what happens if a social worker goes in there and has not centered and hasn't done their work, oh my God, they can create more harm for that client than necessary. So we don't want to do that, okay? And then it helps promote self-control. And that's difficult sometimes. I'm telling you now, even the most skilled professionals, because we are social workers and because we're so passionate about people and those core values of social work, we have a tendency, we're very passionate about it. And when there are some things that we're very passionate about it, you can feel it. You can actually feel it. So just be able to center, talk about it. Look at how this has impacted you. How is this has the potential to create a hostile working relationship, and you don't want that, okay? So now, look on page, I've given you two assignments. Then look on page 7.7. No, look on page 263 and exercise 7.7. And one of the things I want you to talk about when you're doing that stress management, you can do self-talk. I got this. I can handle this. This is not about me. I know the resources. I'm a professional. You know, you have to do that thing. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And then go do it. But if you don't center beforehand, all those emotions and all those physical sensations will come up, and you'll be a basket case. I do believe that, and I don't want that for any of you, because I know who you are, and I know the potential that you have to be some dynamic social workers. Okay, turn to page 263, and that exercise 7.7. So what I'm gonna do is put that on Blackboard in one exercise, and you'll do all three of them. Look on page 263 at preliminary planning. We kind of talked a little bit about that. Enables one to begin the meetings in a coherent and purposeful manner. That means that you've done your work. Your mind is clear. You know the resources. You know a little bit about this client. You don't have any subjective things that's going in your mind about this client. You got a clean slate. You know that you know that you are not judging. You're there to you're ready. You are ready to do that interview because you have done your work in the hand. So what does that look like? There are some things that we're going to talk about, 3 points, but I'm getting ahead of myself. With the preliminary planning, you got to know the purpose of your meeting. You don't just meet to meet. Why are we here? We're here, because of this or that. What is the activities you're going to do? What are the circumstances? Who are the people involved? Do we need to refer? Are there other people who need to be involved in this helping process? Have all that out, before you get there. Okay, you can find that, and at the bottom of page 253, there are the beginning process of formulating your plans. What is the purpose of the meeting? What has to be accomplished? What would one consider successful? So what if we blow up? What if somebody gets angry and nothing is accomplished? Maybe this meeting is for us just to come together. Well, you came together. Then you have to move to the next step. Then the next step. Okay? So just know that. I'm getting to this part I've been waiting to get to. Look on the bottom of page 263 in your book, but also it's on your PowerPoint. And this is all found under your preliminary planning and recording. What are you going to do? And know these classification of social work encounters. You're not just meeting for people just to meet with them. You have a purpose, okay? Your information gathering. What you going to find out? What's going on? What happened? That's the purpose. What is going on? That's why you're meeting. You're trying to find out what's going on. What kind of issues they're having, what kind of problems, where did the issues come from, what are their concerns. That's when you're gathering up all the information that you can get. Okay, then you have your next phase is information sharing. That's when you as a social worker, you're going to utilize all that knowledge that you have in your toolbox, all the resources that you've gained from your years of studying, all the information that you got from networking and collaboration with other agencies and professionals. Then they're going to state their problem, and as they're stating their problems, and then you're listening to them, and you'll be doing some reflective listening. You'll be doing some going back and forth. But also, you'll be sharing with them. That's important, because when they come there, they want some type of information. You got to give them something. Look on page 264. Information sharing is broken down, but also there's some conscience raising. You giving them some consciousness raising. You bringing them some information about resources that they may not have ever had. You've done something. So you can't just let a client come to you to gather information and not give them something, but you're going to be giving them something to help them get to a place of peace, help them to stabilize their family unit, or help them to become better. Okay? So that means you're going to have to be resourceful. You may, as social workers, depending on what group you work with, you may be working in the form of social activism. I like that, in social activism, but also individual activism. You providing them with information and resources that will help them get to the next level, help them to get to a place of peace. That's what that we're called to do. And then after we've done that, ooh, this is some good stuff right here. Then you get to the change making. What they have told me, what I have shared with them, is it going to help them make a change? Is it going to help them to become better? Look on page, again on 264, and you'll see change making. What are the encounters? How are they going to get better? And then you're looking at those encounters from a person and the environment perspective. How is this going to help them to make these changes that they need to? Here on page 264, in change making encounters, you engage others in attempts to modify aspects of the person and the environment system. The target of change may range from person to the political or from individual to society. So that, if you're working in a macro, it's to groups and the broader society. But then when you're working with an individual, it could be that individual and that person and environment, or it could be the entire society. It depends. But just know that your encounters should result in some type of change. Okay? Read that. Change may be directed toward various aspects. It could be small, it could be large. Okay? Read that. Change making encounters may include direct or indirect actions, frequent or infrequent things that they have to do. Social workers must realize that we are advocates for change making. Okay? So just know that. We're going to move on. Good stuff. So planning your record, that's on page 265 in your book. And when you're planning your record, this is resulting from your preparation. Your records are going to reflect the work that you have done on the front end. Okay? And that means notes, telephone contacts and forms. Some agencies have what they call intake forms, and intake forms provide spaces and stuff for you to write notes. It has some identifying characteristics, such as like who all is involved, what is it about the family. It has a whole lot of information that may help you when you come to your documentation. So what does your record look like? What was the presenting need? What were some of the problems that the client had? And then what were the circumstances? I'm going to be uploading a video um, um, for chapter 8, so that you can see what some of this stuff that we're talking about and be able to identify when I had someone to interview, so that you can actually see and get a understanding of what putting this into practice. And when I'm looking at your videos, I'm looking to see, are you putting in some of these things to practice? Okay. And if you haven't, it's okay, because we're going to get there, because you got one more video to submit. Okay. Planning records for social activism. Now let me go back. The planning your records, making sure that you have the appropriate note. And remember, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. So documentation is very important. Use your intake forms. It has a whole lot of information on there, and each agency has their own. A lot of times social workers take little notepads so they can, jot down some information that may be helpful for them when they get ready to come back and do their documentation. Many of you, some of you may be interested in working in macro practice, and that's the study of large groups. So there's the next discussion we're going to have is social activism. Now, some of you may not consider yourself people who are activism, working with stuff like that, but you are. But you may do it on a personal level, more of an individual level, and then some of you may do it at a macro level. But when you're doing that, it lists some things. You want to document the purpose of the meeting, have an agenda, Make sure that you're aware of the laws and regulations in the state. Just want to make sure that you have a plan and that you understand. Remember, as long as you prepare and understand what you're working with and what you're going to do, you are going to be an awesome social worker. But if you don't prepare, then I will be a little concerned that you may find yourself in places that you don't want to be, and I definitely don't want you to be there. Okay? Now, that, according to my notes, is the last for chapter 7. One more exercise that will be for your homework for this chapter, and that's on page 209. And I want you to, it'll start on page 268, chapter 7, summary exercise. I want you to number chapter 7, summary exercise. There are 4 scenarios, okay? I want you to pick one of those scenarios in your book. I don't know if you can see that. But anyway, you can do any one of them that you want to, A, B, C, or D. And then I want you to just do that summary exercise of what all that we covered. And you'll type that up and get that to me using, it doesn't have to be real drawn out, but you'll do those exercises. And then at the end on page 271, you will do that your self-appraisal and submit that with that. So you have 3 exercises for this chapter that you'll have to do, okay? The first one, I'm going to repeat it, is page 259, and that's when you're doing a preparatory empathy, okay? It's only one question. Just answer that one question. And then on page 260, on page 261, exercise 7.6. So you're doing exercise 7.5, 7.6, and 7.7, found on page 263. And on page 268, you will choose chapter 7 summary exercise, and you will choose either A, B, C, or D. And I tell you what, y'all are gonna appreciate me today, okay? Because I don't want to overwhelm you. Scratch that. On page 268, chapter 7 summary exercises, I want you to choose either A, B, C, or D, and then answer number 1. Choose any one of them and break that down, making sure you cover all those things that we covered. Again, homework for chapter 7 starts on page 268, and when you're doing the summary exercise, you will answer either A, scenario A, B, C, or D, and then you will do follow the instructions from number 1 when you're going to talk about all the preparatory things that you have to do. And then at the end of that, you will do chapter 7 self-appraisal on page 271, and that will be it for that. And that exercise will be due Saturday by 11:59. Okay, chapter 7. Now, I want to tell you this also. We will not meet on Zoom on Thursday, okay? Because you're going to have plenty of work to do, okay? So what I'm going to do, you have that assignment that is due Saturday, and then I'm going to take a break for a moment, and then I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to do chapter 8, okay? And then you will have some work in chapter 8 as well, and then we'll meet the week after that, okay? No Zoom session for that. You'll have individual work that you have to do. So now I noticed on the syllabus that we kind of got, we're behind because of time and everything. Just let me lead you and guide you, and then we're going to get through this together. I want you to breathe, and you're going to be okay. Email me or contact me if you need to. But now, remember, homework for Chapter 7, do that summer exercise. Choose either A, B, or C, or D, and answer number 1. Okay? I need to be able to see that you understand preparatory reviewing, preparatory consult, preparatory empathy. I need to make sure that you understand all that, okay? And centering. Then I want you to do the self-appraisal. And then that should be, and I'm going right now to add that on Blackboard so that you can upload that, and it will be due on Saturday by 11:59. And you will, and then I'll be posting another video shortly. Thank you, and I hope you have a good evening.